welcome. It is such a pleasure to have you on this podcast, Resilience with Dhruti Shah. Thank you so much for making the time.
Hi, Dhruti. Thank you so much for having me over. It's indeed a great pleasure to be with you on this podcast today.
Right, Anil, so let's dive right in. We connected at an event actually where we started talking about resilience. Would love to hear from you when it comes to being the leading the people function at a pharmaceutical company. How do you define resilience?
Well, thank you so much for that right away question, Dhruti. I still recall a conversation that we had at an event. I was more looking forward to this detailed conversation as well to spill my beans on what resilience means. In fact, yes, in my 28 years of career, I have gone through a journey wherein I have witnessed multiple incidences of resilience. And for that matter, whenever I have seen individuals or organizations getting back uh, with resilience, there are four parameters, which defines resilience for me. And I believe resilience is something which is a deep-rooted action and triggered by four things. One is a purpose, one is a willingness, hope, and perseverance. And I'm sure, when you combine all the four, what you see as a result is a resilience being demonstrated.
Mm-hmm.
If there's no purpose, if there's no willingness, there is no hope, or if there is no, uh, probably perseverance, you see the resilience is not something which comes up what you see. So for me, resilience is something which is attributed to these four variables, what you see.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for sharing that and the very structured way of looking at it. So the four pillars, if I may say so, in your mind when it comes to resilience are purpose, willingness, hope, and perseverance. Uh, let's take one of those and talk about purpose because as an individual, we keep saying that your why has to be clear, your vision has to be clear. When we think about pharmaceutical industry, how does that show up? How does purpose play a role, especially when there is so much pressure, when there is so much uncertainty?
Well, we exist in a very high stakes environment because pharma industry is a high stake environment where the
Mhm.
impact of decisions that we take they directly affect the patient lives. And the pressure on leaders at that times can be very immense because we exist in a kind of an environment amidst regulatory complexities, competitive markets, and the constant innovation demands. The leaders often find themselves, stretched really, really thin in such circumstances.
Hmm.
And here, hence, purpose really acts as both an anchor and a compass.
Yeah.
A strong sense of purpose, the drive to improve health outcomes, advance scientific discovery, and make a meaningful difference in society. This is something which, according to me, fuels resilience, clarity, and also the commitment. Right? It provides leaders, if I might say, with the inner fortitude to navigate challenges, align teams, and also make tough decisions. Now, so the organization which I represent, and I must bring it to the fore, that Zydus is a pharma conglomerate. Purpose with us is deeply woven into our culture. And our leaders are constantly reminded of the human impact of their work,
Yeah.
whether it's through developing the life saving medicines or driving innovation or even ensuring access to the quality healthcare. Now, this is the connection to a larger mission which energizes the people, energizes the leaders, and enables a focus that goes beyond even the financial metrics.
Mm.
So, all in all, when leaders operate with a clear purpose, they inspire confidence and trust, they foster deeper engagement, and they also build a culture of accountability and excellence. So, according to me, purpose isn't just a motivational sign, it's actually a core driver of sustainable success in the pharma industry.
Yeah. And that's a very important word you just used at the end. And of course, there was a lot of meaning to what you said. Sustainable is something that stood out for me because when we think about resilience as well, right? Sometimes we are resilient, in certain situations we are not. But over a period of time, when we keep emerging stronger from the challenges that we face, we build what we call sustainable resilience, something that serves us in the long run. Uh, you also talked about this thing around uncertainty, not having the clarity sometimes, right? And we operate with a lot of ambiguity as leaders as well. Can you give me an example of when leaders at Zydus operated in deep uncertainty with a lot of pressure, but still overcame the challenges?
Uh, well, I can recall, two examples, and to my mind, there are two powerful examples of Zydus leadership, which navigated uncertainty and emerged stronger. So the first one is, way back somewhere in late 2000, somewhere around 2016 or 2017, I don't exactly remember. So there was a crisis. Zydus faced serious regulatory pressure in one of the facilities which is USFDA approved, and almost as on today, 60% of our revenues they come from US. At that point of time, it was 45 to 50%. We are a major exporter to the US, but which came under the increased scrutiny by the USFDA.
Yeah.
Uh, and our share prices also dropped at that point of time to almost half over the period of. Now, there is always an uncertainty, and in case of situations like this, there is always a panicking. But the way the leaders in our organization responded is not by panicking, but they undertook a full restructuring. So we shifted the complex injectable, manufacturing to a more compliant plant. We reorganized the product mixes, separating the market from the specialty products from the mass market. And what we could achieve is we stabilized our US operations very quickly. We regained an investor confidence because we're a listed entity. And we also positioned the company for the next wave of growth. So, to my mind, the overall leadership quality demonstrated a very, very proactive system thinking approach, adapting infrastructure and also the strategy under pressure while maintaining a long-term focus. We have seen naturally in the such circumstances in Indian pharma organizations, there have been people who simply succumb to the kind of pressure. And for an organization, I might said that in a $3 billion enterprise where almost 60% revenue come from a market like US, any stringent observations or regulatory challenges, helps us to bleed very, very heavily. So this
Yeah.
is one of the rarest of examples in our history, which we always quote of having demonstrated at most uh, leadership, resilience at the organization level. That is number one. Number two, again, it's very, very close to the heart as well, and I'm sure to the nation also, about the recent unfortunate incidents of COVID that we all went through. So somewhere in 2020 and 2021, if you have been reading the newspapers, you would see the name of Zydus prompting out very often, just because we have been identified as one of those pharma manufacturers to have all those drugs in place, and the largest manufacturers of all those drugs which were serendipitously, discovered to be treating COVID by ICMR.
Yeah.
Now, it was at that point of time because we also have our vaccine manufacturing units, we have our biologics manufacturing units, we are deep rooted in innovation and research. We were an organization looked down upon as a company for the rapid fire vaccine development during the pandemics, right? And under the leadership of managing director, we became actually the third company globally to develop an H1N1 vaccine in under 10 months, which is a recombinant DNA vaccine, and leveraging the live virus expertise. Now, this is something which is phenomenal. A journey which almost takes 7 to 8 years. When people realize this is the call of the hour, and we must bring together the best of our minds to live with an expertise and ensure that we build something which would be useful to the world under these circumstances. I think so. It was a larger purpose which drove us, and we were able to build it under 10 months. So, a few of those things, we could achieve with an absolute resilient mindset was rebuilding our large scale manufacturing capabilities in just 10 months, and even amid the global lockdowns.
Yeah.
We recruited almost 25 to 28,000 volunteers across 70 sites during a raging pandemic for the phase
Wow.
2 and phase 3 trials, right? We rolled out a product known as Zycov-D, the world's first plasmid DNA vaccine approved by India's regulator in August 2021. Well, we demonstrated leadership in crisis, so we shipped it. Uh, Other products like hydroxychloroquine, remdesivir, which was supported national pandemic approach. So this is something which is closer to the heart, which will always remember, and we feel so proud of having helped the nation and helped the community under such pandemic by demonstrating our resilient mindset.
Absolutely. And the first example that you shared, so what was coming to mind at that point, the leadership is very clear in terms of, the purpose, where we are headed. Sorry, I'm going to repeat that. So the leadership is very clear about the purpose and where you're headed. Having said that, how did you manage the broader narrative when it came to your teams? Because, you have a huge team, right? Globally, I think you're in thousands of people, tens of thousands of people. How do you maintain the narrative to say, we're doing good, we're doing all right, and keep moving forward rather than getting stuck in that moment when you're being scrutinized?
Well, you asked a very pertinent question, Ruti, because we are a conglomerate with almost 28,000 people globally. And
Yeah.
with the corporate manufacturers, will be around what? And not 35,000 if you add six more.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's the big volume of people who are operating from multiple parts of the world, right? Now, under these circumstances, a couple of things really, really matter. And I'm sure most of the organizations, did that because we have success stories of the pandemic season by many companies, right? So
Yeah.
that means it's a call of the leadership which really makes sense during such circumstances. What is it that you value? What is it, as you asked the first question, the purpose for which you exist? And what is the call of a duty?
Mm.
Now, I don't remember a single day when I had work from home, right? We had to come to the office because we are a manufacturing organization. We had no choice but to build up the morale and ensure that the production continues, not for our profits, but for the call which had come directly from the central government and from the world office. So the first and foremost thing is the topmost leader communication, right? Now that becomes very, very important. Why are
Mm.
you doing what you're doing? What are the core values for which you exist? This is the day for which we have been waiting for years together to show to the world that what are we made of and what is it that we stand true for. Now,
Mm-hmm.
this is something which is deeply, deeply engraved in our mission and purpose of the organization, number one. Number two, it's also deeply engraved in the core behaviors or what we call it's an extension of the values.
Yeah.
And which is the first thing that any individual in the organization goes through and they get indoctrinated with. Now, this is something which unites us, which ties us together, which is something which are the subtle things which we deeply represent. And it is innate in our actions, it is innate in our behaviors, and it's innate in our character as well.
Mm-hmm.
Now, under such circumstances of adversities or uncertainties, where even our employees as humans were facing this challenge, now you
Yeah.
cannot ignore them. What we need to be reminding them of are our past resilience effort, maybe the kind of strength and willingness that we are made of, and you know, allowing them that this is a kind of an opportunity for us to stay together and united, and it's a larger cause that would mean for you and your family as well. And
Yeah.
that's where something which motivated the people when we shared those narratives of our past stories, when there was a leadership communication on a continuous basis. Our internal communication talked about the kind of products that we were producing, and every day when they used to see our name in the newspapers of having achieved something and contributed, that made them more and more proud.
Yeah.
So what gets going under such circumstances is continuous communication. How is it that you keep on updating them about the stage at what we are in? Even to an extent, when we failed in one of our experiments, we had to let them know. But
Yeah.
building their effort and morale, saying that fine, we tried and tested, but we are still resilient. We want to test it further. And all
That
the result,
transparency, right? There is a transparency that you're building into the organization. So let's not just talk about our successes, but also our mistakes or failures, right?
absolutely. And we are an organization who believes in owning up our own failures as well, with so much of amount of proud, and we learn out of them. So all that we stand as a resilient organization is a testament to the fact we have considered failures as worthwhile in our journey.
Yeah. And that's an energizer in itself, right? When you fail, I think you are, given the industry, especially that you're in, where there is so much R&D going on, I think failing is part of the process. And only then you can make something that is foolproof in that sense.
Yes, that's where the kind of ecosystem that we are in, we realize that in none of our review presentations, we catch hold of the individual's accountability for failing. We just allow them to progress on further plans of action, what they have. It's more kind of a partnership. Allowing room for failure is very important rather than only making people accountable and celebrating their success.
Yeah.
And that's what in our parlance, we call it as that psychological safety. Do we really offer people room to fail, or do
Yeah.
we only celebrate their successes? And that's what allows people to be empowered more to produce and do their best.
Yeah. And what are some of the deliberate actions that you take in order to continue creating that psychological safety? Because again, it is one of those terms which sounds great, which feels good, but we don't know what that really looks like most of the time. So yes, accepting failure, communicating that is one way of going about it. How else do you go about creating psychological safety in the org?
Well, there are multiple ways that we do it. Number one itself is the way that we conduct our reviews. And
Mm,
we are very particular in telling the people that fine, it's not a review to identify the mistakes or the failures that we did. It's basically to find out gaps of how do we build them in partnership with the people. So, while we certainly are in the business function, we'll certainly have neck on the line. But then the way that people are treated with respect, trust, and integrity, that's one of the core behaviors that we never forget.
mhm,
And that offers a deeper psychological safety among the people. Whether it's, a kind of a review at the top order level or even at the mid or a junior level, kind of discussions that we have are more progressive and more forward looking. While we understand and we accept that fine, we would have altered and we would have failed at times, but then allowing people to take a deep breath and say, hey, fine, what is it that you learned out of it? Can we think beyond and say that what's the alternate way to achieve it? That is number
mhm,
one.
mhm,
Number two, in all the development interventions that we do have, whether it's a leadership development intervention, management development intervention, whether it's a skill building programs, we run assessment and development sectors, we do coaching and mentoring sessions. In everywhere, this core behaviors of us is integrated.
mm,
So to an extent that we're always reminded by multiple channels of the kind of values that we exist for. And we say respect, trust, and integrity is something which comes foremost into the minds of a promoter as well. Many forums, when they address, we have always been told about not to forget about the respect, trust, and integrity that they have for each other. And when you start demonstrating this in life, when you start walking the talk, when you try to practice what you preach, invariably there is a psychological safety which builds it. And hence, when the leaders and the managers start demonstrating what they have always spoken of, I think so that builds up a culture and continues to exist down the line as well. And
mm.
that's where, by ways of communication, by ways of demonstrating, by ways of practicing what we preach, we offer psychological safety to a larger community that we have.
Yeah, that's fantastic and easier said than done, I'm sure. And was this a very deliberate attempt, or this is how you ended up growing as an organization? Like, did you have tenets where you said that here are the few things that we definitely want to make sure we want to achieve going forward as we grow as an organization? Because you've been with Zydus for a very long time, which means that you've seen it evolve from, you know, uh, maybe the baby steps that the company took to the giant that it is today.
Yes, Shruti. Likewise, there are many colleagues of mine who would have spent a long innings in this company. And I would say it basically calls on to say that something uh, has added value to their lives and something that they have been able to add value to the organization's growth and journey as well. Because it's always a mutual value add because of which you continue in any journey, right?
Mhm,
In any relationship, whether it's personal or professional. There are a
mhm,
few things in common apart from the differences that you're likely to have as humans, which keeps you strong and intact. And that's the same case with me as well. So if you ask me whether it has been a part of the journey or you deliberately attempt to do it, I would say both. Because when I joined this organization, I distinctly remember we are just 3,500 people. Today, as I say and I speak, we are 28,000 people. And then one of the biggest challenges that we have is we are a multi-generation workforce. Now, I would not say it's a challenge, it's more kind of an opportunity. The
mm,
values that you have lived with, and possibly I belong to this community by heart and soul because I've spent more than 2 decades here. You can't expect the same from a newcomer,
mm.
irrespective of any levels what they are, because they run from they come from parallel organizations and have experienced multiple culture in place. Now, the first and foremost thing that we expect any new joiner is embrace your culture. While you might say that when you assess these people during the interviews on the cultural fitment, which is a
Yeah.
word which we use, or the motivational fitment,
Yeah.
it's it's bi-sided, right? While you evaluate people whether they would culturally fit into your ecosystem, remember the individuals are also evaluating whether the organizations would fit into their values and ecosystem. And it's
Mhm.
only when those strong matches do occur, the relationship prospers. So we are cognizant of the fact that we hired people willingly who wanted to join us, and we also willingly wanted to accept them the way they are. And
Mhm.
hence, it's very imperative for us to keep on continuing calling our practices, letting people know what we stand for, and more importantly, giving them the experience of what we have created for them. I think so. In some form or other, people who stayed for long in an organization are responsible for the culture the organization has created. While we say that it's a top-down approach, but however, at some point of time, individuals grow and they, raise up to the top. So it's only the people who exist in the organization create a culture, what the organization sees, and continuing that experience to the newcomers is very, very crucial. So while it comes to us naturally, we have been having this journey for long, but then it's also a deliberate attempt to continue it further for the new coming folks as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like a relay, right? You keep passing the torch in that sense.
Absolutely.
And you
Yes,
keep
yes. Perfect example. Yeah.
it. Yeah, excellent. Uh, Anil, when we started the discussion, you talked about the four big pillars in that sense, and we did talk about purpose quite a bit. I'd love to touch upon the other three, which are willingness, hope, and perseverance.
Yeah.
How does willingness, in your experience and opinion, lead up to building resilience in that sense?
Well, it's very interesting because there are people who have by their mindset. For example, if I take up, uh, you know, uh, you say a Swachh Bharat Abhiyan in a country, right?
Mm,
Now, when you see people describing it or people discussing about it, you really feel a sense of, uh, urgency in the people to bring about a change.
mhm,
But it's like that age-old adage when, when somebody asks how many would like, uh, you know, to see a change happens, you see every hand being raised. But then if people are asked how many of you would want to take an opportunity to lead that change, you don't see many hands going up.
mm,
So willingness in my mind is extremely, extremely crucial. You
yeah,
are a good citizen, there in your mind, you want to see a change happening, but then you don't want to take ownership. And hence, if you don't take the ownership, if you don't take the accountability, if you don't lead the change what you want to see, I don't think you're in building a kind of a resilient atmosphere. Resilience is all about actions, as I said. It's not while it's something which derives from the mindset, but if
yeah,
it stays there and doesn't get translated into the actions, your resilience doesn't see off, right?
yeah,
So apart from the kind of purpose for which you exist in, that willingness to contribute, willingness to come forward, roll up the sleeves and say, fine, hey, I'm here, making my hands dirty, and just to ensure that a purpose stays as it is. So
yeah,
that's something known as willingness, according to me. You can speak great things, but if you don't walk the talk, you don't practice what you preach, you're something different than what you think about. And then in silent corner, you go and have those grudges. I don't think so. Resilience calls for it. So willingness, hence, is extremely, extremely important to translate it into a form of an action. That's
yeah.
my point in willingness.
And that's great because a lot of times when we talk about resilience, we talk about the mindset around it, which is great to have. I mean, books have been written on that, we know it. Unless we convert it or translate it into something tangible in that sense, it it just stays a thought. And if you want to see real change, then we need action, right? So I think that's great. How do you look at hope rolling up to resilience?
So, Jyoti, we are all humans, right? We are bounded by emotions. And I think so each one of us is positive in its own sense. But then, actually speaking, when you deep look at our own life internally, each one of us has got some kind of a blind spot, which either we are not trying to willingly expose ourselves or possibly won't want to digest it to keep it to ourselves. But there is a hope that we live with. And
Yeah.
that hope is something that builds positivity. In fact, the entire evolution of humankind exists because just of hope, right? because when we say that there's something that we hope for, and its hope is something that allows you to stay strong. If there's no hope, I think so, the life would be an end. So in that thing, when you say resilience, now resilience is something which is post an occurrence of what already happened with you, which was under uncertain circumstances, or something that you did not expect. If everything was pomp and happy, I don't think so. Resilience is something which puts in play. So resilience is a kind of an act post an occurrence of something that you did not expect. Now, if you're not hope your way, then you would not even willing to put an attempt. But then before the willingness comes a hope that something is going to be turning positive. Let me just try to make an attempt, and then willingness comes back. So I would say in hope by all means is something that allows us to continue and keep on putting more and more efforts on the go.
Yeah. And it is also, when you were just talking about it, I felt that it's so connected to willingness as well. You first have a hope, and then you have the willingness to try something, which is what you do with purpose, maybe. And you do it consistently. And I think your fourth pillar, perseverance, comes right there. Because I
Exactly.
do believe that you failed only when you stopped trying. Until then, you're trying, right? So how did you think about
Absolutely.
it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the same order which I wanted to speak, but then I, flipped it apart. But it stands with purpose. The first is foremost, what do you stand for? What do you exist for? Is there a meaningful existence of yours or your organizations or the kind of work which you do? What
Yeah.
is it that it's going to be supporting? What is it that's the larger interest in the community that you're doing for? So unless
Yeah.
and until that purpose is clear, I don't think so hope has any role, right?
Mm.
Because hope emerges from a purpose.
Yes.
And it's only when you're hopeful you would be willing or unwilling. But then hope is primary conduit to a kind of willingness that an individual have. And post willingness is not necessary that once you act, you are still successful. And it's a never-ending journey, right? You might fail umpteen number of times. And that's
Yes.
where the kind of perseverance to stay connected and come back finer and sharper or stronger.
Yeah.
It's a whole story gets woven too. So it's like purpose, followed by hope, followed by willingness, followed by perseverance.
Yeah. And as someone who is in such a critical role of heading talent management and organizational L&D at the Zydus Group, how do you infuse all of this into your leaders? How do you build and nurture this qualities?
Well, my primary role is to build leaders within an organization. And the kind of motto that we stand strong and we always claim is that we build people to build our business.
Mm.
So people come prior and the business comes later. We definitely believe that, business is an outcome of the way people try to put it together. So, in all our leadership development interventions, or in all our management development programs, in all the continuous skill building initiatives, in all those development opportunities, in all those conversations, in all those talks, we try to infuse this thought of what organization that we are today is a result of the kind of resilience and purpose that we have had.
Yeah.
When you walk into a room, you'll always see purpose, vision, and mission being crafted. You switch on your laptop in the morning, you see the vision, purpose, and mission being seen there. So it's
Mm.
continuous communication which becomes the key. And when you keep on engaging people with these thoughts, when you keep on reciting your stories and reminding people of the kind of journey that they're a part of, I think so. It builds a culture in the organization that way, and newcomers who join in, they become easier to accommodate themselves with the kind of clear purpose that people have. So, leaders definitely have a call. We expect leaders to come forward and engage with the audience. We expect leaders uh, to allow people to leverage their experience, expertise, and wisdom. And hence, they are partners to all the development interventions. They are not simply the stakeholders or at the recipient side. So they co-create the content with us. They co-create the kind of journey that we have crafted for our people. And they even become the torch bearers and the voice bearers of the kind of community that we want to build. So this is how we ensure that, while the leadership is continuously engaged, I think so our job gets half done,
Yeah.
where they take up the onus and it's an onus which is extended onto them and we empower them to take the call and demonstrate something. So that is how certainly we try to infuse these kind of things together in our leadership.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that, Anil. And with the journey that you've had with the Zydus Group, any personal reflections that have come up for you, any personal anecdotes that you want to share where you showed resilience as an individual?
Uh, well, I would say that, there have been a couple of areas wherein preferably I didn't expect the things to turn out the way that they could.
Mm,
But eventually, was quite successful just because of the perseverance. And usually what happens, Ruti, is, when you stay in an organization for long, you really know how to, uh, you are quite comfortable turning the things around because you
mm,
know the system in detail.
mhm.
But nevertheless, if it is something that you alone are the thought bearer, you find it very difficult to impact and influence a larger community,
Yeah.
right? So, for example, we're just trying to set up a kind of a DEI initiatives across the organization. Typically, we are an organization who have never very strongly, consciously adopted a framework there.
Mm,
That doesn't mean that we do not encourage that. It's just that we are a highly manufacturing intensive, sales intensive organization. So perhaps even after openly inviting the women colleagues to join us, we see a very lesser women employees coming in working with us. Not that
mm,
we don't want to, it's because the other way around, wherein the kind of work demands that exist, probably in a country, we don't have many women embracing that quite easily.
yeah.
Now, how do you encourage more and more women folks to join us from outside? It's only when you show that the women who are there in the organization have risen to leadership levels, have tried to grow internally, have built careers, and are a role model to many in the organization, irrespective of male and female. Now, to set up a framework, it's primarily important for us to ensure that we do have a deep-rooted intervention which focuses on women building careers. Now, it took me 2 years, to actually convince and make that possible, not just because it was not seen as a great attempt, but more so because uh, the general feeling was we still have time to put this forward,
Mm, mhm.
right? And to my mind, at least, 4 years back, where the DAI concept was not so very strong as it is today in multiple organizations, uh, it was considered to be, not an appropriate time at this moment.
Mhm.
Whereas, I was hesitant to say that, fine, this is the moment I think so that we must try to see the opportunity and build it. Well, it took a year and a half for me to convince, and finally, the kind of shape that we have given to this entire intervention, I think so. We are very well recognized in the industry. We have earned multiple awards. We have seen people coming up and wanting to roll this out to larger masses. It's very well documented in the kind of annual reports that we share to the public. And today, I think so. It's because of that perseverance that I continue to be. We are an organization who proudly calls for having a very great DEI initiative in place for the women. And we have certainly seen an improvement in the hiring of women colleagues also as I did because of that. So
Yeah.
that's something that I would say, if I had not been persistent, if I had not been consistent to persevere, if I was not very strong and did not have a conviction in what we say, it would have been a simple, an idea which has been short, which do not have much takers. But I'm
Yeah.
quite happy to see that things have taken a shape and is benefiting the organization.
And congratulations on that, because I think even in that example, and of course, it's a huge win at multiple fronts in terms of achieving equal opportunity for everyone, right? But I think it just in that example, you rolled in all the four elements beautifully in terms of having a purpose, having the hope, the willingness, and to persevere. So thank you so much for sharing that. Anil, any a message that you want to give to leaders out there in order to remain resilient? If there is one thing that you would want people to do, what would that be?
Well, I've always been a great fan of the statement what Mahatma Gandhi said, and I personally have a deep conviction in it. I practiced it myself, and I always believe, which is something that allows people to stay stronger, grow, and be resilient. It is be the change that you want to see. You have many ideas. You have brilliant people whom you work with. You certainly have a lot of creativity pouring in. As I said, unless and until that post purpose, the willingness sets in, right? So I don't think the kind of change that you're wanting to envisage and you can speak about is really going to come. So be the change which you want to see. Take up the leadership. If you've taken up the leadership role, roll up the sleeve, get into it, make your hands dirty, and try to show to the world that it is possible. Because people really need. So, like it's like you order things from Myntra, and what do you do? I mean, you buy it, you test it, and you give it back, right? In real life, that doesn't happen. So people really hesitate to try it out because there is no room for failure. But then if there is somebody who takes up the charge and say, fine, it's possible, probably 1 in 100 attempts, but that success would mean a lot to the people around. So be the change we want to see.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that, Anil. And it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast. You shared such amazing stories of Zydus as a company and how it has come to being what it is. So thank you so much for making the time again. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ruti. It was a pleasure talking to you. And as you asked those questions, I was also trying to quite reflect on my past 2.5 years of journey, 2 decades of journey. And thank you so much for giving an opportunity to, recalibrate my thoughts and bring it forward in this podcast. It was an immense opportunity, and thank you so much for that.
Thank you. Thanks.